Imagine this. In a world where Rome glittered with marble and gold, the loudest applause rose not for poets or generals, but for the scream that followed steel-biting flesh. The crowd loved pain, borrowed, staged, and fed to them as entertainment. For the men on the sand, those roaring cheers were not glory. They were a sentence, stamped by thousands of hands. Personalization. Right now, as you settle into a soft bed, someone tangled in your family line may once have stood beneath the same pitiless sun that bleached the Roman amphitheater white. Not as a spectator, but as the spectacle, shoved forward when the cage door scraped open, offered up to a lion that had not eaten in 3 days, or to a veteran with scars like maps of old defeats. Breathe in. Imagine the dust lifting with each step, the smell of iron and leather, the heat pressing down like a hand. Promise, tonight we will unspool the myth from the man. You will hear why being a Roman gladiator was never the romantic fever dream sold by epic paintings or films, but a waking nightmare of training yards and broken ribs, of contracts written for bodies you did not own, of rare victories purchased with the quiet of your sleep. We will walk the corridors where men measured their courage in heartbeats, where fame was a coin that bought you only another day alive, and sometimes not even that. Transition. Now close your eyes. Let your breath slow, gentle and easy. The lamps dim. The room softens. We step backward through time, down cool stone steps into the underbelly of an arena. Above us, roses are crushed for perfume, drifting sweetly over the seats. Below, the air is damp with straw, sweat, and the metallic hint of blood. Feel the hush before the gates unlock. Hear the muffled hum of 50,000 throats. With each exhale, we cross the threshold from the present into the shadowed past, into the place where sleep and history meet, and the sand waits. Breathe in, slowly. The air is warm, grainy with dust, tasting faintly of iron and grapes. Rome spreads around you like a living mural, but our path narrows to a single place, the amphitheater, its ribs of stone opening to the sky. The city exhales toward it, ovens cooling after the day's bread, olive oil warming in jars, carts creaking home. Closer, the air thickens with sweat and metal, sour wine on a merchant's breath, the dry, sun-baked scent of sand. Everything here orients toward the arena, as if all streets tilt a little in its direction. Listen. The crowd is not yet a roar, only a tide, low, steady, and restless. Vendors call softly, cups click, dice knock against a wooden board. Beneath it all, drums test their skins with a patient hand. Dum, dum, dum. Far below, in a corridor that curves like a vein, a gate slides a finger's width and then shuts again, metal against stone. A dull, careful thud that makes the dust shiver. Sand shifts under sandals, whispering as thousands choose their places. You can hear footsteps on the marble steps, the gentle peal of a bell from a nearby shrine, the wind moving banners that smell of dye and smoke. The smells sort themselves in layers. Closest is leather, straps oiled and worn smooth, the clean bite of tanned hide. Then the edge of metal, cold at first breath, then warm as it takes your heat. Iron helmets, brass buckles, the faint mineral hush of sharpened steel. Threaded through is wine, cracked open too early in the sun, sweet and a little vinegary. There is bread too. The heel the baker's boy tears for himself, steam still lifting, mixed with the resin of torches and the quiet herbal shadow of crushed rosemary underfoot. Even the sand has a scent, baked and bright, a dry warmth that rises and settles like a blanket. Let your skin notice. The armor is a weight that learns your body, pressing at the collarbone, circling the ribs, a measured pull on one shoulder. Beneath it, linen rubs softly, salted with earlier sweat that is dried to a fine grit. Your hands carry the memory of a wooden practice sword, smooth, oiled, faintly sticky with pitch, and now close around a grip wrapped in leather, warmer than you expect. The air in the corridor is cooler, slightly damp against the cheeks. Step into the light, and a white heat lays across your forearms, clean and absolute, as if the sun itself had a hand and set it there. Light divides the world. In the underbelly, it is a ribbon slipping under a door, a square laid on the floor like a promise you can step into. The torches breathe gold into the stones, making shadows that look like sleeping animals. Up above, the day is a polished shield, sun pouring down until the amphitheater becomes a bowl filled with brightness. Eyes narrow, lashes catch the glare, and colors simplify. The sand's pale gold, the dyed stripes of awnings, the dark silhouettes of ravens that circle once, twice, then drift away. In the stands, faces are halos of light. Here below, every detail is softened, as if the world has been padded for sleep. Sounds gather and move like flocks. A woman's laugh lands briefly on your shoulder and then flies. Somewhere, a man clears his throat 3 times. A child asks a question and is shushed gently. The drums adjust. Dum, dum, dum. A hair slower now, like a steady heart before rest. Far down the passage, someone tests a gate with the heel of a hand. 1, 2, 3. And the vibrations travel the wall and find your palm. Sand whispers again as a trainer draws a circle with a stick, then smooths it away with the flat of his foot. Even the animals in their pens settle to a hush, straw rustling as they nose at the water troughs. Beyond the stone, the city's life continues at a lower volume, as if wrapped in cloth. A laundress winds a line of wet tunics. A baker's assistant pats out the last round of dough for tomorrow. A potter turns a quiet wheel by lamplight, the clay shining like a river. On rooftops, pigeons tuck their heads beneath their wings. In the baths, steam loosens from the ceiling and lingers like a sigh. All of it edges the arena but does not disturb it. Here, inside, the world is smaller and slower, turned to a single point. Breathe out. The air in your chest falls away easily, and the next breath is softer. The leather at your shoulder loosens. The linen cools. Around you, other bodies breathe too, each in their own rhythm, a small choir of lungs. Someone hums a tune from home under their breath. Only a few notes, held and released. It does not carry far, but it hangs in the corridor like a veil. A hand brushes your forearm, not in command, but in recognition. We are here. We are together. We are real. The sand underfoot has its own language. When a foot taps, it answers with a hush. When a heel turns, it gives and then forgives, smoothing back to stillness. Each grain is a tiny clock, counting moments in slow, sliding measures. Step forward and feel it accept your weight. A gentle yielding, warm at the surface and cooler just beneath. Stand still, and it remembers your outline for a time, then forgets, as if nothing had ever pressed upon it at all. Now let the light dim in your mind, even as the sun remains high. Imagine the awnings drawn a little farther, the edges of brightness softened to milk. The drums, patient and low, become the pace of your own heart. The crowd's tide recedes to a murmur, like a distant shore. You are held between stone and sky, between breath and breath. and there is no need to move quickly. Not yet. Not for a long moment. Temporal bridge. Imagine you are falling asleep not in your own room, but in a narrow stone cell. Above you, the crowd hums like bees in sunlight. The walls are cool to the touch. The straw is clean and slightly sweet. Any moment now, the door will open, but not yet. Not now. For these few breaths, the corridor is only shadow and gentle air. The gate is only a line of light. The world is only you, your heartbeat, and the quiet promise of rest. He is called Marcus Licinius here. The name fits like a borrowed cloak, serviceable, not his own. In the quiet before dawn, with the amphitheater sleeping like a giant animal above him, he repeats the syllables the way one fingers a bead on a string. Marcus, Licinius. The sound keeps him from drifting too far into places the mind goes when fear chews at the edges. He remembers that, once, his name was a different pattern of sounds, soft like river water. The ludus pressed a Roman stamp upon him and told him it would keep him safe, or at least legible, under the sun. He sits on straw that has learned his shape. The cell is stone and breath and slow time. Water hidden somewhere in the wall ticks like a small clock. A line of light, thin as a blade, slides under the door and rests against his feet. He draws a circle in the dust with one finger, then smooths it away. The small ritual he performs when the heart tugs hard at the ribs. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 2. Breathe out for 6. The air tastes of oil, damp clay, and iron. Linen whispers at his shoulder as he shifts. The leather strap that crosses his chest is warm from the heat of his skin. Above him, the city is a muted chorus. Carts turning home. A rooster declaring that night has edges. A woman's laugh that rises and thins. The amphitheater holds its breath. It is not yet the hour of drums. This is the hour of memory, when the mind opens its cupboards and shows you everything you have ever put away. He lets it. There is a field at summer's end, heavy with barley. He sees the little ridge his father made with a wooden rake so the rain would run off and not drown the seedlings. He sees his sister's hands shaking flour into a bowl, the soft puff, the way dust turns to paste when you add water, then to bread with patience and heat. He remembers the habit of counting stars while walking home, so he would arrive on a full breath and not a ragged one. He remembers the smell of sheep after rain, wool like earth, a good tiredness that sleeps clean. The memory that comes least gently is the day they took him. He does not dwell on it, not tonight, not with breath to pace and muscles to soften, but it will be heard because it belongs to him. Sun flash on a line of shields, a standard riding the wind like a bird with 2 bright feathers, the first shout in a language that would later become his daily bread. The rush, the hard floor of a wagon, the rattling march south, and then the gate of the ludus, and men whose eyes measured shoulders and wrists as smiths measure metal, and a contract written in another man's hand for the use of his body. In the cell across the corridor, Tiberius clears his throat. 3 short sounds, a habit of an older man. Tiberius hums sometimes, a tune that is all rises and falls and no words, the kind of melody you might use to rock a child to sleep. Marcus does not know if the man has children, or if the tune is only something he borrowed from a tavern and kept because it fits in the pocket of night. The hum appears and disappears like a small light carried down a long hall. It makes the air feel less tight. "Awake?" a voice asks, low, not to break anything. It belongs to Aristian, young and fine-boned. who speaks Greek to himself and Latin to the world. He came last winter from a caravan road, with a scar at the lip and a coin he has never spent sewn into his hem for luck. I am, Marcus says, and his voice is a river stone, rounded by time, simple. He leans his head back against the wall, letting the cool find his scalp, and studies the jointed lines where one stone meets the next. For a little while. Aristion draws his own circle in dust. The two circles are not the same size, but they seem to breathe together. I dreamt of olives, the young man says. Not the fruit, the leaves, the way they flip to show their pale bellies when wind comes. They look like a school of fish. Marcus smiles. The kind that happens slow, like bread rising. Dream them again, he says. Make the tree big enough to shade us both. It is easier to speak in images when the hands are tied to real things. Marcus keeps a small fragment of wax in his palm, a practice token from the training yard, pressed long ago with the imprint of a laurel leaf. It is not allowed, not really, but the lanista looks away when the thing that is carried is small and does not sharpen into a blade. He rubs the wax with his thumb until it shines. He remembers the leaf it copied, its veins, the way light found its edges, the smell when he crushed it on a day he wanted to feel strong. The lanista, stern and careful, speaks to them like a farmer to animals he intends to keep alive. The sand is hungry, he told Marcus on his first week. Not for blood, for stories. Feed it something worth swallowing, and it will not bite so hard. Marcus thought the man cruel then. Now he thinks him exact. The arena eats names and gives back echoes. You must carry your own name with both hands if you want to find it again after. He thinks of Livia, not as a wife, because he never married, but as a possibility. The woman in the market who sold pomegranates in autumn, her fingers stained. He speaks to her sometimes when he cannot sleep, building a life out of small, careful pieces. A clay jar on a shelf, a cloth hung to dry, a bend in the river where fish gather. He tells her very ordinary things. How many swallows nested this spring under the eaves? How the baker's boy laughs when flour explodes. How a cat once insisted on walking the edge of the training yard wall as if it were a promenade. He always leaves space for her reply, a silence he fills with breath. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 2. Breathe out for 6. Fear always arrives quick and proud, like a young horse that has not yet learned the reins. But breath is a halter. It teaches the animal to step back. A moth comes and writes its invisible sentence across the torch flame. The light softens. The cell seems larger by some gentle trick. Marcus considers his hands resting on his knees. The little healed splits at 2 knuckles. A crescent scar that looks like the letter C. The way the fingers have thickened from the work of practice and the work of living. These hands once stacked kindling and mended a fence. Now they balance a shield's weight and mark distances on the sand. He is not ashamed of the change. He notes it like weather. There is a boy further down the corridor, Sextus, young enough that the men still call him Pup. He murmurs in his sleep sometimes, in the sing-song cadence of a prayer taught by an old woman. Tonight his voice says only one word, over and over, home. The word moves like a small boat that will not capsize because it is too lightly loaded. Marcus wishes good wind to it and lets it pass. When he first came, sleep fled him like a startled hare. He learned slowly to coax it. He learned that sleep prefers clean straw, a stone warmed by a hand, the sound of someone breathing nearby. the promise to the body that it will be carried gently for a while and not driven. He learned to lay his gear in a certain order: sword, shield, sandals, to give the mind tidy edges. He learned not to count the people in the stands by numbers, but by colors. A band of blue cloaks here, a little cloud of red scarves there, the pearl scatter of white togas. Colors are softer than numbers. They let the heart loosen its jaw. He was not always good with a blade. In the early days, his strikes were too honest. He believed weapons were for clear truths. Tiberius taught him the softer argument of angles. Let the other man finish the sentence he started, the older fighter told him, and then change the punctuation at the end. Marcus found he liked the grammar of it. Violence became not a language he loved, but one he could conjugate. There is dignity, he discovered, in doing a hard thing carefully. In the same way, there is dignity in setting a table straight even when you are the one who will carry it on your back. He keeps his dignity in smaller ways, too. He washes when water is brought, even when the bucket is more rumor than liquid. He scrapes mud from the soles of his sandals with a chip of tile and lines them neatly by the wall. He mends the tear at his tunic's hem with stitches, so even they soothe his eye. He straightens the straw where he sleeps, and each time he finds a single piece that is bent into the shape of a crescent moon. He keeps those crescents in a little nest in the corner. It is childish, he knows. It is also a map, one little moon leading to the next. Tonight, the doctors, the trainers, came earlier than usual, their footsteps the measured conversation of men who have known too many mornings. They handed out small portions of barley mash and a fig split cleanly in two, for sweetness, one said, and the word felt both medicinal and kind. Marcus ate slowly, tasting the fruit as if it were a letter from someone dear. Pale skins, tiny seeds that crackle under the tooth. He saved one half seed on his tongue for a full breath before swallowing it. And in that breath, he was not a commodity, but a man eating a fig. There are days when anger walks the hall like a helmeted guard. Marcus has learned to let it pass without saluting. Anger is quick-burning wood. It is all blaze and no warmth. What keeps him alive is steadier, something like oak coals. It glows. It gives. It asks for patience and answers with heat. Tell me something from your river, Aristian whispers from the dark. Marcus considers. In spring, he says, the water climbs the bank and tries to see what lives on land. It leaves little gifts there. Smooth stones, reeds, feathers from tired geese. When it goes back, it forgets some of itself, and that becomes a pond where frogs practice for the night choir. That is good, Aristion says, and you can hear the smile in his voice. Say another. In winter, Marcus says, the river is a glass the wind breathes on. It fogs and clears, fogs and clears. If you are quiet, you can hear it crack like salt underfoot, except it is sweeter. They fall into an easy silence. From the far end of the corridor, a man speaks a prayer to Mithras, careful and plain. Someone answers with the name of Isis, and no one argues with the gods. Many doors open to the same room, Tiberius always says. Choose the one that creaks least tonight. He thinks of the training yard, the measured arcs drawn in air, the rhythm that grows in the spine when the body repeats a shape often enough that it becomes a kind of song. The yard is where fear learns manners. You pace, you pivot, you offer the shield like an answer and receive the other man's question. You do not hate him. You hate the hunger in the stands, that asks you both to bleed. Sometimes the crowd wants you to be less than human. Sometimes it will accept you as more. Your work is to remain exactly human, in your breath, in your stance, in your refusal to break your own heart. He remembers the first time the crowd said his Roman name like they meant it. Marcus! It rolled around the bowl of the amphitheater and came back to him, not like a command, but like weather. He gathered it in his hands and held it to his chest for a moment before letting it go. The sound did not make him taller. It made him more visible to himself. When fear rises again, the young horse snorting, pawing, he shows it a gate that opens into a pasture. Breathe in for 4. Hold for 2. Breathe out for 6. He counts the ribs of light on the floor. He counts backward by 3s from 30, but softly, as if not to wake a child. He thinks of common things. The seam where 2 stones kiss, the scratch of straw, the quiet arithmetic of sleep. In the cell beyond Aristian's, Navia speaks. She is a medicus's assistant, allowed in the corridor after hours when the bodies that need tending are too many for men's hands alone. Drink, she says to someone. Not because you are thirsty, because your blood will want it tomorrow. Her voice is low and even, the tone of a stream that has worn a path and knows it. She pauses near Marcus's door and slips a folded cloth under the threshold. He picks it up, a strip of wool scented with thyme. For calm, she has whispered before. He brings it to his face. The herb rides the air like a small, brave boat. The first drum is far away and kind. It does not call yet. It converses. Dum, dum. The sound moves through stone and finds his bones. He answers by spreading his fingers wider on his knees and softening his jaw. The drum will come closer later. Now, it is only reminding them that time has not forgotten its work. He thinks of his teacher at the yard, a man with hands like roots. Listen for the moment, the teacher said, when the business of living becomes the art of it. It is the width of a fingernail. It is enough. Marcus looks for that fingernail width tonight, in the way the torch paints gold on the wall, in the cool stripe of air that finds his ankle, in the steady, companionable scrape of Tiberius's breath. He owns very little, a strip of cloth, a chip of tile, the wax leaf, his practice circles in the dust. He owns his attention, though, and he spends it tenderly. He knows the exact sound the key will make when it turns in his lock. He knows how many steps from this threshold to the staircase and from the staircase to the gate that opens to light. He has walked the path in his mind so many times that the sand there has taken his footprint and keeps it. Sleep, Tiberius advises the air. Marcus obeys in pieces. The body dozes. The mind keeps watch like a dog by the door. He allows the first layer of rest to settle, light as linen. He drifts to the edge of a dream in which he is kneeling by a river, not to drink, but to watch minnows change their minds all at once and turn. He wakes enough to move his shoulder so the strap will not bite. He sleeps again, deeper. He wakes because a fly tickles his wrist. He sleeps because the fly gives up and goes elsewhere. In the tunnels of rest, he leaves breadcrumbs of breath to find his way back. When he wakes for the last time before morning, the line of light has grown fatter. The city above is stretching, cotton soft. The amphitheater inhales. The corridor holds its own breath, as if not to cause a ripple. He hears the steward's sandals approach, the measured pace of a man who does not hurry for anything, because the day will come to him. The key turns. The sound is true and inevitable. like the end of a sentence. The door opens a hand's width. The air from the passage touches his face, bringing with it dust and sun and a small, bright tang of crushed flowers from above. Marcus stands. He collects himself the way he collects his gear, in order. He is not an idea. He is a man with knees that bend and lungs that fill and a heart that beats. He puts his hand flat to the stone for a moment, thanks it for its coolness, and then lets go. He picks up the strip of time-scented wool and tucks it into his wrist guard, where it will remind him, when the day grows loud, that there is softness in the world that cannot be taxed. Aristion meets his eyes as they file into the passage. "Olives," the young man says. "Olives," Marcus answers. It is a code and a promise. It means, remember shade. They walk the stair in silence, the sound of sandals a soft river. The drums are closer now, steady and slow. Not a summons, but a heartbeat. The gate ahead is a line of light drawn on darkness, and every step makes it brighter. The men do not speak, because there is nothing left to arrange with words. They have already arranged the only things they can. Breath, stance, small mercies to themselves and each other. At the threshold, the world divides again. Cool behind, heat before, shadow and blaze, the smell of straw and the smell of sun. Marcus looks down and notices, with a calm that surprises him, that a moth has landed on his wrist and is riding the tremor of his pulse as if on a gentle sea. He waits until it lifts, then he steps. He takes with him the barley field, the fig's sweetness, the rivulet of water in the wall, the wax leaf, the hum of Tiberius, the olive's pale bellies, the young boy's word home, the measured hands of the teacher, Navia's time, the crescent moons of straw, the weight and steadiness of his own name. He carries them onto the sand like talismans, not to ward off death. He is too honest for that, but to remember, in the wide white glare, how to remain a person. The crowd will wake soon, loud and bright. The drums will change their pace. The day will do what days do: arrive, unfold, and ask to be lived. Marcus Licinius will place his feet where his mind has already walked, and when the light hits his face, he will let it all in, not as an enemy, but as weather. He will keep one part of himself in the narrow cell below, in the cool and the quiet, where his breath moves like a tide and the river waits. And, in that kept part, there is room for you to rest beside him for a moment longer, before the gate opens fully and the sand receives its stories. Breathe in. Let the world widen now. Not just the narrow cell and the thread of one man's breath, but the city that holds him. The people who look down into the bowl of light. The quiet machinery that turns beneath the spectacle. In Rome, a gladiator is two things at once: property and constellation, a man sold and a man sung. The law calls him infames, one who has slipped from the net of honor, unable to speak in court, unable to wear the simple dignity of a citizen's stripe. Yet the city turns its head when he passes. Boys try his walk. Poets borrow his name. A slave who can be famous, a star who cannot own his own evening. That is the knot Rome ties and pretends not to notice. Above the sand, the order of things arranges itself like a fresco. Closest to the sun sit the senators, rings winking, togas arranged with the care of gardeners shaping vines. Their seats are cool marble, rubbed smooth by generations of weight and worry. They tuck dates into their cheeks and discuss grain prices in a tone that suggests they are commenting on the weather. Some lean on ivory staffs. Some carry the fatigue of late-night debates. Some bring sons who imitate their father's indifference and then forget and lean forward when the drums begin. A fan whispers against a face. A friend raises two fingers for more wine. A scribe notes which names the crowd loves, as if tallying stars. Below them, the equities, knights with ambitions as polished as their brooches, draw lots for wagers, and explain odds with quiet hand chops in the air. They treat the day like a calculation. Who has trained under which doctor? Who favors the right leg? Who tires at the shoulder after the third exchange? They speak of men as if they were chariots. What line they favor, how they corner, whether they lunge too soon. Even their praise sounds like bookkeeping, but their eyes soften when a fighter bows with grace or spares with a measured mercy. Calculation and admiration share a bench. Farther down sit the crowd that is Rome. Bakers with flour still ghosting the hair at the temples. Porters with rope marks like bracelets. Freed women in bright shawls. Carpenters explaining footwork to children using their hands as little shields. They have brought their noon in baskets. Olives, fragments of cheese, bread with the crust cracked by a knife, figs squeezed between thumb and forefinger to see if they will split into sweetness. They have also brought their wishes, simple and large. A woman wants her son's fever to break. A man wants the foreman to notice his careful work. A girl wants to see courage and tuck it away like a smooth stone. They will leave the amphitheater heavier or lighter depending on how the day fills their private scales. In shaded sections, veiled matrons sit together in palanquins of fabric and scent. The laws glance at them. Do not sit too close. Do not show too much. Yet the laws do not notice how their fans speak. A fan can mean more air. It can also mean look there. It can be a narrow door opening and closing on a forbidden thought. A few of these women have sent silk cords or little rings, have found ways to slide names into the hands of go-betweens. Rome whispers that some matron's pulse has learned a gladiator's rhythm. Graffiti somewhere has tested ink on a wall. Crescens, the net fighter, sets my heart on fire. The city blushes and looks away. The city smiles and reads again. At the rim of the arena's world is the editor, the giver of games, who uses the day like a brush to paint his standing. Bread and spectacle, the people say. But bread and spectacle are not only for delight. They are letters sent to the city. Remember me. Favor me. Forgive my taxes. Bless my name when the census comes. The editor chooses matchups with care. A myrmillo against a thraex for contrast. A secutor against a retiarius to make a dance of net and trident. He weighs stories the way a cook weighs spices. Too much bitterness and the dish turns harsh. Too much sweetness and the crowd sleeps. In the purple-backed seat, he leans to ask quietly if the velarium, the awning, might be drawn a little farther. His people should not burn for their loyalty. The arena itself divides like a mandala. Here, the sand, a pale sea that remembers every footfall and then forgives. There, the gate, a mouth of shadow where men become shapes and then names. Around and above, the velarium billows like a second sky, the ropes humming as boys haul and fix and test. The exits, vomitoria, pour the city in and out without snarling the flow. Vendors pass with trays, almonds warm with salt, cups of watered wine, sponges dipped in vinegar for the heat, cloths with mint for the temples. The amphitheater is a machine for gathering and dispersing attention. It feeds on focus, and today, focus is a sacrament. To understand what the city sees, you must see what the city does not. In the ludus, where the fighters live and learn, the day begins before the bells. The air is cool, then warmer. The courtyard holds its square of sky like water. The men wake as if someone has rung a soft silver chime. Gear is checked by touch. Straps are dyed with oil. The doctors, trainers, arrive with their faces like cliffside stone and their hands like good tools. One specializes in the round shield and short sword, another in the crescent blade and tall greaves. A third, narrow-shouldered and quick-eyed, knows the net's language and the trident's punctuation. They speak in verbs: yield, pivot, cover, enter, breathe. Training begins with breath, always breath. A line of men move through the forms, like reeds that have agreed on a wind. Step, plant, lift, step, plant, lift. Wooden swords, rudies, cut quiet shapes in the air. Shields tilt just so, becoming doors and roofs and promises. The yard fills with the soft thok of wood on wood, the brush of sandals, the small grunt that accompanies a well-caught blow. Bodies heat. The morning brightens. The doctors pass among them not like tyrants, but like carpenters inspecting a frame. This beam holds. That joint needs shaving. Here, bend less. There, keep the line. Brutality is present, yes. Punishment's quick and public for laziness or pride, but it is not the point. The point is fluency. A gladiator must speak his style until it speaks back. Between drills, there is food. Not the food of feasting tables, not rich fish or rare birds, but strong, dependable fuel. Barley mash, beans, onions, a little cheese, dried fruit. Men in the city call them hordeari, barley men, as if to mock them. The fighters smile and eat. The body knows what it needs, and the trainers know too. Bone thickens when fed this way. Muscles learn to be springy, not just large. Water is portioned like coin. The medicus checks eyes, checks pulse, smears honey on a cut, presses a palm to a forehead to feel if heat is a friend or an enemy today. A small boy, one of the water carriers, plays a game with himself, counting how many breaths it takes him to cross the yard without spilling a drop. Marcus watches him and learns something about walking. There is camaraderie, coiled and modest like rope stored in shade. Men argue about nothing. A joke gone flat, a misremembered lyric, whether a fig is best eaten split or whole, because arguing about small things is how you practice being a person when larger things try to take that from you. They mend, they tease, they compare scars like men comparing routes on a map. A pair sit with backs touching, not speaking, sharing warmth along one spine. Someone starts a quiet song that asks the wind to bring rain to a distant field. The yard softens around it, as a cat softens under a hand. Yet dignity is conditional. The same lanista who measures out figs can sell a man after a poor showing. The same crowd that writes a name on the wall can erase it with a shrug. A gladiator walks a narrow beam above a pit full of opinions. When he pleases, the city forgets his chains. When he falters, the city remembers the key. The law says one thing, the heart says another, the purse says a third. Rome listens to all three and chooses according to appetite. In the stands, this appetite sorts itself into gestures. One man raises a hand with 2 fingers bent to show approval without overpromising. Another, emboldened by wine, stands to shout a name as if it were a spell. The signals the crowd will use later, thumbs that may lift or lower, kerchiefs that will flicker, are part of a shared fiction, a language that tells itself it decides life and death even when the editor has already settled the matter quietly with the lanista. The arena is a theater, and everyone plays their role with a seriousness that makes the play more real. For the senators, the day is politics made visible. Look how generous I am. Look how just. Look how steady in the glare of noon. They calculate which acts of mercy make them appear godlike and which acts of severity make them appear strong. The trick is not to seem hungry for either. For the merchants, the day is a market with a different coin, a chance to place a possible future on the balance and watch it tip. For the poor, it is respite, bread and heat, a tale told by bodies. For the children, it is a chapter in the book of courage. They flip the page with sticky fingers and promise themselves they will be brave in some gentler way when their time comes. The ludus and the arena are separated by a short walk that feels like a pilgrimage. On that path, the city reveals how it sees these men. A fruit seller lowers her basket in respect, or perhaps in habit. A group of boys fall in behind, copying the strides. A priest makes a sign not quite a blessing and not quite a warding. Women glance, look away, then glance again. A mother lifts a child so the child will remember seeing a name that others will later repeat. A drunk calls out a crude joke and is hushed by his own companion, who has a sister somewhere and understands that sometimes jokes slip knives under the skin. All of it goes into a gladiator-like weather. Sun to the bones, wind to the ears, rain in the folds of the tunic. He does not choose the forecast. He chooses only his coat. Inside the women's sections, stories bloom quietly. A young wife from Tibur came to Rome with a heart that beat out of time, and on her third visit, she found it keeping rhythm with a man on the sand. She writes his name in the corner of a shopping list, then crosses it out and buys figs. An older widow, hair silvered like water, watches the discipline in footwork and thinks of her husband's carefulness with tools, and she feels a calm respect that has nothing to do with desire and everything to do with recognizing craft. A girl of 12 studies how a fighter rises after a fall and decides privately that she will not cry in public again. Another woman, bold under her veil, presses a small amulet, a bronze fish, into the hand of a boy who knows how to get things through doors. Rome will tut at such tales in the morning and tell them again at noon. Night at the ludus is a different city. After training, after washing with water that feels like a blessing, after the barley and the little piece of roasted meat that sometimes appears like a holiday, men sit in the courtyard under a square of stars. The walls, which seem tall and stern at noon, feel now like arms drawn around a sleeping child. Someone cracks a joke that causes shoulders to shake rather than voices to bark. A man who lost badly that day is given the first ladle of stew because sorrow is salt and the pot should be seasoned. A trainer passes and corrects a posture without a word. Hand to shoulder, shoulder to back, the line improved almost by suggestion. Brutality lives here too. No one pretends otherwise. A man who defies orders may feel a lash. A newcomer who sneers at an elder's limp will learn to respect tendons the slow way. But cruelty is not the aim. Performance is. The lanista would rather profit than punish. He weighs men like investments, how to preserve this one's knees, how to protect that one's humor, how to market a rivalry without spilling it into hatred that cannot be controlled. He is not a father. He is not a friend. He is a weather forecaster, trying to keep the season mild enough for a decent harvest. The city's writers, those with eyes tuned to currents, sneak metaphors from the arena to the forum. They call political opponents retiarii, flinging nets of rumor. They praise a senator's scutum when his shield of allies holds firm. The spectacle becomes the city's grammar, shaping how it talks about courage and failure, about luck and law. Even those who refuse to attend, the stern moralists who frown at blood, cannot escape the words the arena has given the tongue. At dawn, before gates open, the graffiti speak. A wall hand says, "Celadus the Thracian makes the girls sigh." Another answers with, "Crescens, the net fighter, has my heart." The city pretends to be scandalized. The city is pleased to be scandalized. Gladiator blood is rumored to cure weaknesses. A woman smears a drop behind her ear as if it were perfume and swears the headache left. The superstitions are small tributaries feeding a wide river of appetite. The river runs past temples and bathhouses, past law courts and kitchens, and pours into the bowl of the amphitheater, where it is lifted, glittering, into air. There is work unseen by the crowd that feels like prayer. The sand is raked in careful lines. One man's job, done with pride, the pattern soothing like a loom's. The helmets are polished until they hold small suns. The girdles are checked, the buckles tested, the greaves aligned. A boy warms oil in his palms before rubbing it into a pair of leather straps so they will not crack. The medicus's table is laid out like an altar. Needles, linen, vinegar, honey, a clean blade that hopes not to be used. In a corner, an older fighter shows a younger one how to knot a cord so it will sit flat under a wrist guard and not raise a blister. His hands move slow and sure, and the younger man listens with his eyes. All the while, the city and the school mirror each other. In the forum, men debate whether virtue is a straight road or a path that bends with terrain. In the yard, a trainer shows how a straight thrust will fail against a man who has learned to step just left and turn his hips. In a temple, a priest intones that mercy adorns the powerful. In the editor's box, a hand hovers and then spares, or does not, for reasons the hand prefers not to examine. A philosopher teaches that attention is the only real wealth. Marcus, down below, spends his carefully and feels richer when he has kept it gentle. And about the women who watch, Rome tells jokes, but the truth is quieter and layered. Some love the fighters in secret, yes. Some love the idea of courage because they need it to carry buckets upstairs and bear children and survive men who forget tenderness. Some come because the arena is a rare room in which their gaze is allowed to be public, where looking hard is not an offense, but a right, bought with a ticket. Under the awning, a woman studies the geometry of a net cast and tucks the angle away for later, when she will weave a basket and marvel, privately, that craft speaks across walls. In this society, contradictions sit comfortably. A man wearing the purple stripe will pass a law about dignity and then mark today's favorite on a wax tablet with a little heart by the name. A woman told not to speak will compose elaborate letters in her head to a man she will never meet beyond the distance between sand and seat. A boy will vow to be brave and later learn that sometimes bravery is letting someone else be right at supper. The arena teaches and unteaches at once, and the city nods as if it understood. Back in the ludus, the afternoon thins into honey. Heat settles. Shadows lengthen, lazy as cats. The men bathe with ladles, scoop after scoop, sighing, water as lullaby. The talk floats and fades, then floats again. Someone recites lines a poet wrote about the sea. Someone else answers with a joke about barley. A trainer, having scolded harshly in the morning, tells a soft story about the first time his own knees shook on the sand, and the men listen because sharing fear is a kind of engineering. It distributes weight, so bridges do not break. When twilight brushes the walls, the city above relaxes its shoulders. The senators' carriages roll away, wheels whispering. The streets refill with the long patience of ordinary life. Mothers count children. Bakers bank fires. Lovers make appointments with corners and shadows. In the women's quarters, perfumes are closed with their little stoppers. Fans fold with soft clicks. Names are stored carefully where dreams can find them. A last banner flickers like a tongue-tasting night. The day has asked a question. The city has answered in applause and wagers and silence and sighs. Tomorrow, another question. Between them, a seam of rest where one man, then another, remembers he is not only a role. Marcus lies down on straw that smells faintly of time because a gift has tucked itself into his gear. The ludus settles into the audible peace of sleeping bodies, a peace ordinary and precious. The amphitheater, emptied, holds an echo of its own voice like a seashell. Breathe in, slowly, the social world that wraps the sand, the senators above and the doomed below, the trainer's strict kindness and the school's rough brotherhood, the women's veiled desire and unveiled curiosity does not vanish when lamps go out. It softens. Like wax warmed in the hand, the shapes blur and become pliable. For a few hours, the city releases its grip. For a few hours, even a famous slave can be only a breathing creature who belongs to the night. And in that loosening, a truth glows quiet. Rome's love for spectacle is not only hunger for blood. It is hunger for story, for the moment when a person is more than his chain and more than his cheering. The city feeds and is fed. It uses and is moved. A gladiator is a mirror, and each face that leans toward the sand sees something of itself: ambition, fear, tenderness, the wish to belong, the wish to be free. Let the breath leave gently, the senate's bronze, the crowd's linen, the ludus's rough wood, the velarium's sailcloth, the women's silk. Each has a texture in the fingers of your mind. Each, at this hour, is at rest. Even desire sleeps with one hand open. Even grief closes its eyes for a while. The arena's lamp is dimmed to a single ember. We will return to it, but not yet. For now, we leave the social ring like a cloak laid over a chair, ready for morning, and we follow the quieter sound of footsteps to the place where one life waits at the edge of light. Let the lens pull back, softly. The cell dissolves into corridors, the corridors into the oval of light, and the oval into a city with laws, calendars, and appetites. Rome did not invent crowds, but it perfected them. The amphitheater was a public heartbeat, a stone instrument the state could play. Bread, then spectacles, panem et circenses, was not only a joke muttered by a tired satirist, it was policy, a rhythm of giving and guiding. Distribute grain so bellies are quiet. Offer games so voices converge. Tell a story large enough that private griefs fit inside it and grow, if not lighter, at least legible. Games were letters written by power to the people, read in bright noon, with drums for punctuation. They wrote, "We are generous," when the editor scattered tokens for loaves or tossed small coins. They wrote, "We are in control," when exotic animals paced the sand. Beasts pulled from distances the common citizen would never see, folded into a single afternoon as if the empire could compress the world at will. They wrote, "We are merciful," when a hand lifted, and we are decisive when a hand did not. The amphitheater turned virtues into gestures and gestures into news. A steady ruler could soften a season of bad harvest with a day of spectacle. A shaky one could try to braid loyalty from the ropes of the Valerium. Politics prefers sightlines. The arena offered them in tiers. Senators visible to equestrians, equestrians visible to commoners, commoners visible to each other. Each class seeing itself and learning how to sit, how to signal, how to belong. The emperor, when present, wore the sky like a crown. A box draped in color, the air around him obedient. Yet the same architecture that elevated him also bordered him. 50,000 throats could pivot from praise to displeasure in a single afternoon. Spectacles were a barometer. They let power feel the weather of opinion without waiting for storms in the forum. In that calculus, gladiators were more than men in gear. They were ritual function. The empire gathered its fears about borders, about harvests, about the foreign and the familiar, and set them upon the sand in shapes it could manage. Here, the lion is caged until the appointed moment. Here, the rebel is renamed Thracian and given edges you can count. Sword length, shield curve, the area of a man's reach. Anxieties became matchups, then outcomes, then stories told over supper. The city exhaled, not because the world was safer after, but because its chaos had been made audible, measurable, briefly domesticated. If you listen gently, you can hear the sacrifice beneath the applause. Not the grand religious kind with priests and carved altars, but a civic offering, repetitive and ordinary, like sweeping the same steps every morning. The fighters were social victims, not in the sense that the crowd hated them, but in the sense that the crowd needed them to carry weight. A load has to go somewhere. Rome's heavy ideas, honor, order, empire, found shoulders in the ludus. A handful of bodies bore what a city could not hold in the abstract, the price of feeling mighty, the cost of feeling safe. Some volunteered, romantics, debtors, men chasing a flash of paid attention. Most did not. Prisoners of war, condemned criminals, the unlucky sold. When the gate closed, however, the distinction blurred. All wore the same dust. All learned the grammar of survival. All were braided into a single myth. Man against man, man against beast, man against fate. The myth was tidy. It made the messy truth of empire, which was law and violence, roads and taxes, theft and infrastructure, feel like a moral fable with an ending you could see. But the arena was also a mirror, and mirrors are dangerous because they tell the truth with your own face. As centuries turned, some Romans looked and did not like what they saw. Philosophers stepped into their shade and spoke in low, troubled voices. What happens to a soul that trains itself to cheer at pain? A letter writer confessed in private that he left the games feeling thinner, meaner, as if the sand had taken something from him he did not intend to offer. A few refused to attend, not to advertise virtue, but to protect it. Others went and watched carefully, for courage, for technique, for the moment when a hand lifted and a life was spared, to prove to themselves that mercy could still enter a room so full of heat. Moral decline is an easy story to tell. It is harder to weigh. The games did not cause Rome to falter. They did, however, sketch Rome's edges in darker pencil. As wealth concentrated, generosity became theater. As borders stretched thin, exotic hunts grew grander to reassure citizens that reach still exceeded risk. As politics soured, the thumb hesitated more. Practice severity for the sake of appearing strong. When famine pinched or plague haunted doorways, the schedule of spectacles thickened as if noise could outshout hunger or bells could drown out a cough. The sand is honest. It records the press of feet without commentary. We are the ones who read patterns and call them signs. There were costs measured not only in blood, but in coin, in time, in attention. Amphitheaters were vast machines to create afternoons. They also created habits. A city that spends many hours learning to look outward for meaning, to be fed bread, fed stories, fed judgments, risks forgetting how to cook meaning at home. At its best, the arena gave the public a shared language of courage and grace. At its worst, it made endurance a commodity and pain a currency, and then asked the poorest to mint that coin. This is not only Rome's problem. Bring the lens forward, kindly. Our own ages build their amphitheaters in steel and light, broadcasting arenas into every palm. We dress spectacle in different garments, helmets and pads, scoreboards and replays, contracts written in numbers that look like years. But the arrangement of eyes and bodies is familiar. We weigh strangers with statistics. We choose sides and feel larger in the choosing. We narrate victory as virtue and defeat as flaw, because that story is easy to pack in a lunch pail and carry to work on Monday. There are differences worth holding carefully. Modern athletes choose their labor. Rules guard their bones. The aim is not to die, but to excel. Medics sprint by right, not by permission. The thumbs of a crowd do not decide fate with a single tilt. Consent matters. Safety matters. The arena learned to protect its players, and that learning is a goodness we should not dismiss lightly. And yet, listen to the crowd inside the crowd, the part of us that still thrills at collision, that wants grace to be reckless, that shouts advice to bodies we do not know. Consider the days when news is heavy and we crave distraction so sweet it numbs. Consider the way a city can prefer a parade to a policy because a parade is easier to watch. Consider how algorithms pass free loaves of attention in endless baskets, then invite us to sit, to scroll, to clap, bread and Wi-Fi, spectacles at scale. The cameras make the oval bigger and the distance smaller. The distance still remains. If Rome's games reflected an empire's insecurity dressed as control, what do our spectacles reflect? Some days, our best selves. Teamwork, craft, the miracle of skill honed until it sings. Other days, our restlessness, a wish to outsource awe, to subcontract courage, to rent meaning from an afternoon and return it by dusk. We are gentler than Rome and also the same animal, still teaching our nervous systems to settle by watching other bodies run, lift, collide, endure. It is not shameful to be a watcher. It is human. But watchers carry choices. We can consume or we can witness. Consumption is quick and forgetful. Witnessing is slower and leaves room for gratitude. Back in the stone bowl, history kept braiding counter threads. Emperors at times curbed the blood to polish their image. Philosophers wrote. Later, communities of faith, new, growing, stubborn, refused to bless the spectacle, and in time helped to thin its force. Laws changed. Fashion shifted. The sand learned different stories. Even then, the desire for spectacle did not vanish. It migrated to circuses with horses, to theaters with masks, to processions with music, to debates sharp enough to sting without drawing blood. A society's health is not measured by whether it enjoys gathering. People need to gather, but by what they choose to make together and what they demand of those who perform. When we look at Marcus now, one man at the edge of light, we can see him two ways at once. He is a product of structure, contracts, markets, wars, the broad, strict hand of law, and he is a person, a breath, a memory of barley fields, a habit of rubbing a waxed leaf with his thumb until it shines. Rome needed him to be symbol. He needed to stay human inside symbol's mask. That is the oldest negotiation a performer makes with a crowd, to allow the gaze without surrendering the self. What, then, did the games do to Rome? They gave it a grammar it could use to speak about courage. They also taught it an ease with pain that cost it tenderness. They offered afternoons where mercy could be practiced in public. They also trained hands to hover over other people's lives as if a hand were a god. They stitched a vast, multilingual empire into a shared habit of cheering. They also drew attention away from quieter labors, of law, of repair, of care that make nations last. And what can Rome teach us as we lay down the day and prepare to sleep? That spectacle is a powerful medicine. Dose matters. That crowds can be beautiful, choirs of breath, waves of joy, and dangerous, quick to judge, slow to repent. That we might choose to be the kind of audience that nourishes performers, rewards craft, refuses cruelty dressed as fun, remembers that those on the sand, on the stage, on the field, in the ring, have kitchens and mothers and little rituals against fear, that we might insist on being not just entertained, but enlarged, made gentler, more alert to each other. Breathe, quietly. Let the amphitheater recede, step by step. You can still feel its architecture in your chest, a ring that holds attention, a sky that can be pulled close. See how the lights dim without losing their warmth. Hear how the drums, once thunder, become a heartbeat again, steady and low. In the present, stadiums empty, screens go dark. The city returns to ovens and laundry lines, to school books and handshakes, to the subtle courage of ordinary days. In the past, the same. A vendor packing almonds, a matron closing a fan, a boy tracing a name on a wall, and then sheepish, rubbing it away. Marcus remains, one small light where history meets breath. He is not a lesson to be wrung dry. He is a reminder that behind every system is a pulse, and that sleep is the place where we return from roles to selves. The empire used him to polish its image. The crowd used him to simplify its fear. But he kept a crescent of straw and a memory of river water, and in that private country he could not be purchased. If there is a way to leave the games cleaner than we entered, it is to be like Marcus in the stands of our own lives, to watch with mercy, to cheer for skill and kindness, to quiet the part of us that enjoys harm, to let applause be gratitude and not hunger. Now, let the dust settle in your mind. Let the stone grow cool. Let the phrase bread and spectacles fold back into Latin and then into silence. The history remains, but its edges blur, softened by the distance of sleep. The arena's lessons have been spoken. The torches are wicks of ember. The crowd is birds on a wire, then nothing. We step back through the corridors, past the medic's careful table, past the raked sand, past the gate that is only a line of light. We return to straw, to linen, to the night air that smells faintly of time. And from this gentler room, we can look at the whole, ancient Rome, modern stadiums, the quiet theater of our daily thresholds, and feel, not accusation, but tender clarity. Close your eyes. History is not going anywhere. It will wait while you rest. The empire's noise fades to a hum. The hum fades to a hush. The hush becomes the soft, rhythmic tide of your own breathing. In this slowing, we keep what is useful and set down what is not. We keep attention, gratitude, the wish to be kind. We set down the thirst for blood, the restless need to be louder than our fear. The past dims to a warm glow, like coals in a safe hearth. Tonight, it will heat the room without burning. Tonight, the sand is only sand, the sky a quiet cloth, and your body a vessel that has earned its gentle sleep. The stair is a river of sandals. Breath gathers into one slow animal. Marcus rubs the waxed leaf once with his thumb and tucks it away. The gate in front of him is a narrow brightness, a blade laid flat. He tastes time. He finds his count. Breathe in for 4, hold for 2, breathe out for 6, and lets the numbers become bridges he can step across without looking down. The gate rises. Light pours like water over stone. Heat lays its hand across his shoulders, familiar and impersonal. The amphitheater wakes in a single inhalation, 50,000 lungs discovering their voice, then shaping it. The sound has layers, a low tide of murmurs, the drums' firm syllables, a silver fringe of laughter from seats wrapped in shade. The sand blinks white, then resolves, rake lines soft as script, a dark feather, a print that looks like the letter S, where someone turned in place. His opponent is already there, a few paces to the left of center, where the light is clean. Not a monster, not a rumor, just a man in gear, breathing as he breathes. A Thracian by the curve of his sword, by the squared greaves, by the crest set like a small wave across his helmet. The man rolls his shoulder once. Habit, not bravado. You learn to see these things when you want to live. Marcus raises his shield, and the world narrows without becoming cruel. It is a corridor now. Him, the other. The small, moving gate between them that opens and closes as feet speak to sand. The drum drops into a slower, deeper time. Dum, dum, dum. The first exchange is never about victory. It is about measuring a room with your hands. The Thracian tests the left. Marcus answers, a polite no. The Thracian feints high. Marcus does not buy. Their blades kiss without cutting, a greeting. The crowd approves in a rustle, like wind through olive leaves. Marcus hears none of the words and all of the weather. Inside the helmet, the world is small and absolute. Leather, air, the scent of his own warmth. His teacher's voice arrives, not as memory, but as muscle. Show the door, close the window, receive, return. He invites a slice and meets it with shield, lets the impact travel down his arm and out through his ribs into the ground. He feels what the ground says back. You are held. He circles, not wide, not stingy. The Thracian's footsteps are light but not quick. He favors the right when he tires. Marcus files the knowledge away, simple as placing a cup on a shelf. The second exchange carries more truth. The Thracian tries a pattern. Low, high, low. A rhythm to stir impatience. Marcus refuses the invitation, moves his shield like a door on well-oiled hinges. When he answers, it is not to punish, but to correct. A short, clean stroke that taps the helmet's rim, says, I am not where you think I am. The crowd likes honesty that does not brag. The noise tightens, then releases. A woman's fan stops midair. A boy's hand forgets the fig he is holding. Time begins to stretch. The heat brightens edges. The drum widens the space between beats until Marcus's thoughts can walk there. He sees small things. A moth trying the light and giving up. The line on the sand where the rake turned. A dark thread caught on the Thracian's greave. He hears a personal sound in the crowd. A single cough he thinks he has heard before, perhaps from a man who sits always in the same place. The arena, enormous, becomes intimate. The fight, intimate, becomes enormous. The Thracian grows impatient and chooses an argument of speed. He comes in with the crescent blade singing. Marcus lets the first note pass his ear, raises the shield to catch the second, and takes the third on the chin of his sword so close that the two pieces of metal try to be the same thing. Sparks are less spectacle than rumor. 2, 3, then gone. In the push, shoulder to shield, Marcus smells the other man. Oil, wool, fear, a note of rosemary from some small kindness in a corridor. For the width of a breath, they are almost one animal with two hearts. Then the sand remembers their feet and parts them gently. The crowd swells and falls, a sea-testing shore. Above, the emperor sits in a square of shade, a small weather system of gold and careful faces. Marcus does not look up. He keeps to the human horizon, eyes to shoulder, shoulder to hip, hip to foot. He listens for the mistake that is not a mistake. The second that comes after exhaustion thinks it has permission to speak. It comes, subtle as a cat's blink. The Thracian lunges, and, as he recovers, his right knee wavers. Half an inch, a letter slurred. Marcus does not punish. He redirects. Shield lifts, sword shows, hip turns. Their positions reverse like a sentence flipped to the passive voice. The Thracian's blade is suddenly less argument and more question. Marcus answers with a tap that removes certainty, then with another that removes the blade entirely. It falls with a sound that is mostly sand and a small, surprised note of iron. Here is the choice. The arena knows it, and its knowing gathers like a storm that has not yet decided where to reign. Marcus stands with his sword, a hand's breadth from the man's throat. The Thracian's breath is a visible thing, a small animal in a cage that opens and closes. His eyes, under the rim, hold the straight, naked plea no one teaches and everyone understands. Kill and live. Spare and risk. The math is simple and not. He remembers barley fields. He remembers a laurel leaf pressed into wax. He remembers Navia's strip of wool and the scent of time that says, there is softness, even now. He hears Tiberius's hum at a distance that cannot be measured with steps. He hears his teacher. There is a fingernail width when the business becomes the art. He moves his blade the width of a fingernail and lifts its point away from skin. His free hand opens, palm outward. It is a shape older than the city. It means enough. The crowd breaks into 1,000 minds. Some call for blood because it is noon and they have paid for noise. Some call for mercy because their own day has been hard and they wish gentleness to be contagious. Many call for whatever the man next to them calls because that is how afternoons work. The sound rises like birds startled from a field, collides, resolves into a question that travels upward to the box wrapped in shade. Marcus feels the question lift from the sand, climb the ladder of air, and offer itself to power. He does not look up. His eyes remain with the man whose breath has not learned what it will be asked to do next, but he senses the emperor's gaze moving like a small sun across the oval. A hand appears at the edge of his vision. A thumb. Ordinary, human, not a god's, but a man's, hovers like a tiny blade deciding weather. It wavers, tasting the wind of opinion, the editor's calculations, the appetite of a season. Seconds are elastic. One becomes long enough to lay down your whole past upon and still have room for a thought about olive leaves. In that stretched space, Marcus feels no pride and no fear, only a clarity that is both thin and sufficient. If a life is spared, something in the city softens by a finger's width. If a life is taken, something in the city hardens by the same measure. He has offered his vote with his open hand. The rest is not his work. The emperor's thumb rises, not a flourish, not a performance, a simple tilt, palm turned outward, the small gravity of mercy. The noise that follows is not the roar of victory, but a relief, a blanket shaken and laid over the afternoon. The Thracian sword is returned to his hand by a boy who has practiced dignity. The man tests his grip reflexively, then lowers the blade in a gesture that is older than rivalry. Thank you. The editor makes a note. The medicus loosens a muscle somewhere in his shoulders. Above, a woman who had not breathed for a count of 6 lets the air go and laughs into her palm. Marcus steps back. The sand gives way, then forgives. He salutes. First the emperor, then the crowd, then privately, the man in front of him. Formalities complete, he turns toward the gate that has become, again, a soft square of shade. The drums change. Less summons now. More heartbeat. The arena's weather cools by a degree. The fight is over, but the body does not believe immediately. It shakes, small and useful. He lets it. He has learned not to bully his nerves. He guides them the way he would guide a young horse to water, patient, unoffended. Inside the gate, shadow folds around him like a cloak someone remembered to bring. The corridor smells of straw and oil and something sweet that might be the ghost of crushed roses from above. Hands brush him, counting, checking, human. Navia appears like a stream where you expect a stone. She touches his wrist, where the pulse insists on being known, and nods. Drink, she says, because water is still the oldest magic. He does. The liquid carries the arena's heat away in a single smooth journey. By the time it reaches his belly, the crowd has become weather on a far hill. The Thracian passes, led gently by a boy with a hand at his elbow. Up close, without the helmet, he is simply tired and alive in that sincere way that makes a face seem younger. He pauses. Their eyes meet without armor. I owe you, he starts, then stops because debt is a heavy word, and the corridor is a place for lightness after weight. No, Marcus says, quiet, not to break anything. We owe the sand less today. That is enough. The man nods, and the nod completes a circle that had been left open. Tiberius is waiting in the cool with a rag that has found water. He presses it into Marcus's hands and says nothing, which is the correct number of words. Aristion appears and says, olives, which is also correct. They sit. No one narrates the fight. The body speaks in small decrees. Here, ease. Here, stretch. Here, rest. The wax leaf warms in Marcus's palm. He rubs it until it shines, then holds it to the light leaking under the lintel, as if reading an inscription. There will be no triumphal feast, no procession in streets. Survival is not a parade. It is a private seat given to you in your own chest. The lanista will be pleased because the ledger prefers living men. The editor will be pleased because mercy, judiciously distributed, polishes a name. The emperor will not think of this again until the next afternoon requires theater. But Marcus will remember the fingernail width where he chose the art over the business and found, to his quiet surprise, that he did not become smaller by sparing, but a little more exact. He washes. The water is not cold. It is appropriate. He eats barley and a sliver of meat and does not hunt for more. He ties the strip of time back into his wrist guard because the day is not yet finished, and he prefers to travel with green company. The yard is cooler now. Shadows lean. A moth writes again across a torch flame, declines heat, chooses dark, survives. He smiles at the wisdom. The crowd spills from the exits, becoming streets, becoming errands, becoming dinners and disputes and lullabies. In a shaded room somewhere, a woman closes her fan and decides to be kind about a small thing that would have been easy to make sharp. In a tavern, a man who wanted blood tells a story with different emphasis and does not notice that his hand opens when he reaches the climax. In the emperor's box, a scribe files a note under clemency, and it joins other notes that make a pattern only gods ever see. Night begins to arrive, not like an invasion, like a promise kept. The ludus hums at a lower pitch. Men polish edges. A boy counts his breaths, crossing the yard without spilling a drop. Navia laughs at something Sextus says that is not very funny and therefore perfect at this hour. Tiberius hums the rise and fall tune that has no words and all meanings. Aristian unties the coin from his hem and ties it again because rituals stabilize weather. Marcus lies down. The straw remembers him and offers its map. He places the wax leaf under his palm, the way you tuck a letter you have already read beneath your pillow to catch the kind of dreams that say, "You are not lost." He counts backward by threes, softly, as if leading a child down a hall lit by lamps. The day does not argue. It agrees to be folded and set on a shelf. He does not feel triumphant. Triumph is a trumpet you cannot sleep near. What he feels is available, to rest, to the next morning, to the parts of himself that are not armor. He thinks, the city asked for a story. We gave it one, where both men leave the page. He thinks, my teacher will say the line was clean. He thinks nothing at all for a while, which is the best thought. Before sleep carries him, he remembers the moment the thumb hovered. He understands, with a clarity that does not sting, that victory on the sand is alone. The interest is paid in breath and in the quiet work of not letting fear sour the tongue. The real victory is stubborn and unshowy. It is the decision to preserve humanness under a helmet, to meet eyes when meeting eyes is dangerous, to keep a crescent of straw and a river in your pocket where the city cannot tax them. The amphitheater cools to stone. The drums remember they were always hearts. Above, the stars arrange themselves with their old patience. Below, a man sleeps with a leaf of wax in his hand and a strip of time at his wrist. His body, relieved of performance, rehearses only breathing. The sand, forgiven for a day, lies quiet as a folded cloth. Somewhere a moth chooses dark again and lives. Breathe, slowly. Let the day loosen, thread by thread. If you listen under the noise of crowds and kings, you can hear a single lesson tolling like a bell in a quiet valley. The life of a gladiator is a reminder that even in the harshest circumstances, a human being seeks meaning. Not the loud kind, the kind that stands on tables and shouts, but the small, durable kind that lives in habits and attention. Marcus carried his meaning the way you carry a warm stone in a pocket, a wax leaf rubbed to a shine, a strip of time, a breath counted with care. He could not choose his stage. He could choose his stance. He could not command mercy from a distant hand. He could become merciful in the width of a fingernail. Meaning is not an epiphany that strikes like lightning. It is a choreography taught by patient teachers. Notice, soften, align. Notice the body's plea and offer it breath. Soften the place where fear has gripped the jaw. Align action to a value small enough to do. Keep dignity tidy. Wash the dust from the day. Tie the strap flat so it does not blister. Open a hand when a blade would be simpler. In a city that required performance, Marcus practiced the art of being a person. It was not grand. It was exact. Let the mind drift over the contours of that exactness. A circle traced in dust and smoothed away. A bowl of barley eaten slowly, as if sweetness were a letter from someone dear. A friend's hum, a tune of rises and falls, no words and all meanings. The crowded bowl of the arena transformed, for a breath, into a room with two men and a question that the sun itself could not answer. Meaning lives there, in the decision to be intact in places designed to take you apart, and us, here, now, with lamps dimmed, and the night leaning lightly on the window. We no longer drive people before lions, yet we still search for spectacles that feed our fears. We build our amphitheaters from steel and light. We stream them into our hands. The thumb that once hovered in a marble box has learned to hover above a screen. Tilt up, tilt down, like, dismiss. So quick, so easy. Our era does not demand blood. It asks for attention, which is a kind of blood the mind makes. We can spend it brutally, or we can spend it as Marcus did, deliberately, without waste, with mercy. Consider how the day trains us. The rushing, the lists, the alerts that peck at the edges of our attention until the whole loaf is crumbs. The world will always be happy to choose for us what to watch, what to want, what to fear. But attention is still ours to braid. We can be consumers of moments, quick hands, empty plate, or we can be witnesses, slower, grateful, willing to be enlarged. A witness watches a performance and also the person performing. A witness applauds craft without asking for harm. A witness remembers that the body under the costume has a kitchen and a mother and little rituals against fear. Think of your own training yard, gentle and real. The kitchen where you practice patience with a pan that insists on sticking. The office where you hold your tongue until the truer sentence arrives. The hallway where you kneel to tie a child's shoe with the same care a trainer uses to tie a wrist guard flat. These are not shows. They are the craft of living. You are not the emperor today, deciding who gets to breathe. You are Marcus with his wax leaf. A person who can choose the art over the business in the width of a fingernail. Let's let the past lower its voice and help us sleep. Inhale to a quiet count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold softly for 2. 1, 2. Exhale for 6. Long and generous. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, at your own gentle tempo. Each breath carries a little sand out of the mind. Each exhale rakes the arena smooth. You may notice how the images of Rome have softened at the edges, like frescoes lit by lamplight. The velarium, a pale cloth, the wind moves with the tenderness of a mother. The emperor's box, now only a square of shadow, where a person once sat and did their best. The crowd, a field of barley, heads bowing and lifting in a breeze you can almost smell. Somewhere, in the ruins of the Colosseum, night pools in the arches, and a quiet walker hears footsteps that are not ghosts, but memory practicing its lines. The stones hold the echo of men who crossed a bright threshold and tried to remain themselves. Their voices teach us to value the calm of this night. Let the old grammar of bread and spectacles resolve into a simpler sentence: attention and kindness. Feed what is hungry. Refuse what is cruel. Where a hand might hover over another's life, even in small ways, in kitchens and group chats and meetings, let it tilt toward grace. If we must have shows, let our shows train us to be braver and gentler, not meaner and louder. If we must be an audience, let us be the kind that sends performers home more human than when they came. And if some part of you has felt like Marcus, watched, measured, asked to play a role that fits like a borrowed cloak, may this be your narrow corridor of shade. Here, no gates. Here, no drums. Here, only a bed that remembers your shape, air that tastes faintly of clean linen, and a window that keeps the smallest piece of sky just for you. You can set down the helmet. You can unbuckle the day. Lay your tools in order, not as soldiers, but as friends. Let the candle of your attention grow short and golden. Moths will choose the dark and live. You can choose rest and live better. We will leave Rome as travelers leave a river, reluctantly, with a last cup in our hands. Take what is useful, the discipline of breath, the habit of small, exact kindness, the courage to open a hand even when the crowd demands a fist. Set down what is not, the appetite for harm, the rush to judge, the belief that louder is stronger. Let the story's heat cool to something you can touch. The sand folds into a cloth. The cloth becomes a pillow. The pillow becomes a shore where sleep arrives like a tide that knows your name. Listen, the world has thinned to a few sounds. The hush of your own breathing, the distant, friendly murmur of night moving through trees or streets, the slow echo of a drum that turns out to be your heart, unhurried and wise. Your eyelids are heavier now, not with struggle, but with permission. Inhale for 4, hold for 2, exhale for 6. If the mind brings you a bright fragment, an arena, a fig, a leaf, thank it, and let the fragment drift like a petal on water. Somewhere, arches open to a sky of velvet. Somewhere, roses crushed long ago have left a sweetness in the stones. Somewhere, a name that was once shouted is now only a soft scroll in dust, unread and unneeded. And here, in this room, a person who has worked today, the work of sorrow, the work of hope, the work of ordinary hours, leans back into a darkness that is not empty, but kind. The past stands watch like a quiet friend. It asks nothing. It offers company. May your sleep be free of arenas. May the thumb that hovers over your thoughts tilt always toward mercy. May you wake with a small wax leaf of meaning in your palm, warm from your own hand. May the day ahead be a softer crowd, the decisions slower, the applause inside you not for performance, but for presence. Now the story dims to embers. The embers glow to warmth. The warmth settles into bones, into pillow, into the hush that closes a gentle door. Breathe in and out. The amphitheater of the mind empties without hurry. The sand is smooth. The sky is a calm cloth. And you, quiet listener, are already crossing the threshold where history yields to rest and rest to sleep. Let the arena fade to stone and moonlight. What was once a roar is now only the whisper of wind through ruins, slipping in and out of broken arches like a quiet tide. Hear how the night carries it, soft, softer, until even the wind learns to tiptoe. Where there were cries and drums, there is the song of cicadas, steady and velvet, a hush that braids the dark together. Their rhythm is kind, unhurried, like a hand smoothing linen. Let it wash over you. No story to follow, no decision to make, only the easy company of small voices that have always known how to sing the world to sleep. Set down the armor. In its place, feel the gentle warmth of your blanket, a patient weight that says you are here. You are safe. The straps are gone. The buckles are gone. Only softness remains. The bed remembers your shape and welcomes you back. Shoulders lower. Jaw loosens. The space between your eyebrows becomes wide and calm. Breathe with me simply. Inhale through the nose in 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold lightly for 2 to 1, 2. Exhale as if fogging cool glass for 6 dash, 1 dash, 2 dash, 3 dash, 4 dash, 5 dash, 6. Again, in 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 1, 2. Out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each exhale is a door closing softly on the day. Each inhale opens a window to clean, moonlit air. If a thought knocks, let it. Thank it. And watch it dissolve into the distant past, like footprints smoothed by night wind. Nothing to fix, nothing to carry. The sand of memory is raked smooth. Feel the body grow heavier, pleasantly so. Ankles, calves, knees, hips, belly, chest, shoulders, arms, hands, fingers loosening one by one. The neck is unknotted, the tongue resting easy, the eyes cooling like stones beside a river. Your whole weight settles into the mattress the way a leaf settles on quiet water. Listen again. Wind in arches, cicadas in the grass, a stray owl's low punctuation far away. Between these sounds is the most important sound, your own breath. Steady, patient, wise. Follow it for 3 more rounds. In 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 1, 2. Out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 1, 2. Out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold 1, 2. Out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. If images appear, the pale sand, a wax leaf shining, a gate of light, let them drift to the edges, small lamps in a far hallway, friendly and dim. They are watchers now, not demands. The night keeps them. You need not. From this moment forward, nothing urgent can reach you. Your room is a quiet country with borders kindly guarded by sleep. The blanket is your soft shield. The pillow, your honest ground. Your breath is the only drum, slow and sure. Inhale and exhale and let go. Sleep peacefully. You are free. No arena will trouble your rest.